let's talk about Squid Game. Squid Game, a South Korean Netflix original directed by Hwang Dong-hyuk, has grown to become one of the most successful series on the platform overnight. Well, you can't blame them. The concept alone is enough to get you interested. Invite a couple of bankrupt contestants to compete in children's games for a chance to win financial freedom. And if they lose, they die. However, it still faces some flaws that I feel many have overlooked, which, in my opinion, is holding the series back. And for the sake of this video, I will only be tackling its first season alone. If there are more seasons to be released in the future which tie these loose ends, remember that I am critiquing it from a certain context. With that being said, let's begin. My main gripe with this series is the game itself, more specifically its concept of quote-unquote fairness. The show constantly reminds us that the participants of the game should be competing on equal grounds at all times.
하지만 너희들은 이곳에서 가장 중요한 걸 망쳐놨어. 평등이야. 이 게임 안에선 모두가 평등해. 참가자들 모두가 같은 조건에서 공평하게 경쟁하지. 바깥 세상에서 불평등과 차별에 시달려온 사람들에게 평등하게 싸워서 이길 수 있는 마지막 기회를 주는 거야. 너희들이 그 원칙을 깼어.
But the nature of almost all the games held are unfair or entirely based on luck. So what do I mean by this? Take for instance the nighttime sequences. This is when the game incentivizes everyone to murder each other by increasing the total winnings with each death. But isn't that in itself unfair? The weak competitors stand no chance against the big boys of the batch at all, and from there, the concept of quote-unquote fairness is already broken. But sure, at this point, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt that the game's idea of fairness is in the fairness of opportunity, no matter one's background. But then, how come during the game involving the glass platforms, the frontman just decides to handicap the contestant who so happens to be an experienced glassmaker who can identify the fake tempered glass by turning off the lights at the last set of platforms?
Let me adjust the settings.
So which is it then? Fairness only in opportunity or fairness overall? The theme of equality is inconsistent. However, all of that is thrown out the window though, since based on the ending, the whole reason why the game was built in the first place was just because Oh Il-nam was too rich for his own well-being. This makes it more infuriating since they had already established such a powerful philosophy about the game, and for it to transform into something so underwhelming as being too rich was just disappointing to say the least. If there's one thing I learned from Kinjo Fukasaku's classic Battle Royale, which is the film that inspired the genre in the first place, is that when it comes to these types of death games, we'll call it, the rules and limits of the world should be established clearly before moving on, or you might leave your audience wandering away from the actual story and focus on the specific details of the actual game. In Battle Royale, the competing students are prompted right from the get-go of what they can and can't do. They just simply need to kill off one another and the last man standing wins. Whoever deviates, dies. In Squid Game, oftentimes the game is inconsistent with its own rules, which just causes more confusion. Ironically enough, the more limited the game format is, the more freedom you have to explore more of the characters and each of their philosophies. The series is also heavily riddled with clichés and stereotypes, which just make the artistic choices feel lazy rather than coincidental. Let's start with the frontman, and come on, everything about the frontman just shouts pretentious, edgy millionaire. From the Fly Me to the Moon soundtrack playing in the background, to the calm and collected villain, sips wine as the world crumbles type moment. His reveal was probably the most cliched revelation in existence as well. And don't even get me started with the VIPs.
What convinced you to bet so much on number 69?
Oh, it's such a beautiful number. 69!
Oh, you dirty dog.
In my opinion, it would have been way better if they just kept the VIPs silent, as it also adds some mystery and eeriness to them. Other cliches include these cliches aren't necessarily bad, but it isn't helping the show either by making itself vulnerable to predictability. Speaking of predictability, this isn't necessarily an issue, but more of a nitpick on my part. Before even the series begins, the audience already has an idea of how long the show will run for, which in this case, 9 episodes, which already sets certain expectations. That's just the nature of streaming websites like Netflix. Take for instance the honeycomb game. As Gi-hun is desperately carving out the absurdly difficult umbrella symbol on the cookie, as a viewer, we have a certain expectation that he will eventually make it out alive since, you know, he is the main character and there are plenty more episodes left. The show just can't go on without him. They can't just kill him off right off the bat, he has plot armor. It's just a matter of how he escapes. Many shows suffer from this problem, and for me, if Squid Game just restructured some of its sections or took bigger risks, it may have not suffered from this. Well, this isn't necessarily the show's fault, however.
그럼 몸으로 때우시면 됩니다.
몸으로요?
Despite all that, there are plenty of reasons why this show was a success in the first place and why people love it so much, which I do as well. Everything from its charming cast of characters, beautiful cinematography, unique production design, and even its uncanny score. The show also had some really powerful moments such as the red light green light game, which was the perfect introduction that set the tone for the rest of the show. I also really enjoyed the final game between Gi-hun and Sang-woo, which was a satisfying conclusion to Sang-woo's character arc. The strongest episode, which is my personal favorite, was episode 6, Ganbu, which really puts everything on the line between the main cast, in which all the actors did such an amazing job. This subversion of expectation is where the show really shines in my opinion. Lastly, the premise in itself is probably the strongest aspect of the film, since children's games are already universal to begin with, and placing such a wholesome idea into a dark situation is interesting as it is. At the end of the day, that's just my take on Squid Game, and if you guys have any other thoughts on the show or some points that you necessarily don't agree with, don't forget to leave them in the comments below. Anyways, that's it for me today. Thanks for watching.